Um, these are two fellow NASNA members. For those of you not familiar, NASNA is the National Association of State 911 Administrators. I'm not a state 911 administrator, but I play one on TV, at least for the purpose of the of going to NASNA meetings. Bill Range is from New Mexico. He is with the I can't remember Department of Finance Administration. And Eric, where's your office located? What branch of Utah?
I'm going to talk a little bit about legislation throughout the discussion here. But we had a piece of legislation that ran earlier this year that took me out of DPS and put me into a quasi-state agency called the Utah Communications Authority. So I stayed in my old office in Taylorsville, but officially I'm not part of DPS now. I'm part of UCA. And some of you may have run into Steve Proctor over the years. Steve is my boss, and he's the executive director of UCA. So.
I also invited Walter Ray with the 911 program in the state of Kansas. He was unable to attend, but he did provide some information about their state 911 program, so I'll probably try to sprinkle some of that in as we go through the questions. I saw on the registration we had people registered from the state of Nebraska. Are you here? What is your role in Nebraska, sir? Okay. Well, great. Thanks for coming. We really appreciate that, and we may ask you some questions too, so we can get the. Terrific. Well, thank you very much. I think there's a lot to be learned from finding out how people do things in other areas. That's one of the benefits of NASNA, I think, is just having that kind of discussion of how things are done elsewhere. You can kind of pick and choose the best for your situation. But I called this panel jokingly "Keeping Up with the Joneses," but I think there is a little bit of a competitive feeling sometimes at NASNA meetings to see, okay, where are we at, and how do we compare? Friendly competition. But I just want to start with kind of an overview. Give us a general description of your state 911 program, how it's funded, what kind of activities you undertake, and how the local call centers figure into that.
Okay. Again, I'm Bill Range. I'm with the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration. We have a statewide program. We fund local governments through a grant program with fiscal agents that are generally cities or counties. We have, I heard a lot of interesting things earlier, things like revenue distribution. And we have a 51 cent a month surcharge, and it's working. We still do not have prepaid and VoIP legislation passed. We hope to run that again this legislative session. We're not making great strides on next generation, but again, as Daryl said, we can certainly learn from each other. Just a few kind of facts and figures. We have 47 PSAPs in New Mexico. Our population is about 2.1 million, which is roughly half, or a little bit less than half that of Colorado. We do. Back to the topic of revenue distribution, we have a single surcharge statewide, 51 cents. Everyone pays the same surcharge. The people in Debaca County that have a population of 800 get the same level of service as those in Bernalillo County, which is Albuquerque. So, is there cross-subsidy going on? Yes, indeed there is. But we are able to serve our citizens in a consistent manner throughout the state without someone in a rural populated county having to pay several times that of someone in a highly populated county. So it's really kind of a matter of fairness and equity. Everybody gets the same level of service. There's a lot of things we don't fund. Let me back to my facts and figures. 47 PSAPs, 9 state police PSAPs, with 4 of those being secondary. We have 4 tribal PSAPs. The program, we administer the program. The funds funds go through our Tax and Revenue Department and into the 911 fund, which we administer. We are an evil state agency. Ooh. 5% of our revenue goes to fund 5 full-time employees, and I'm one of those. We provide technical support, oversight, and a lot of things. I don't know if you've noticed me earlier, I'm bouncing out of the room every 5 minutes for calls. We stay busy. We do a lot of things that support our PSAPs. They still have local control. We don't tell them how to operate a PSAP. But when it comes to, these are the things we pay. All the bills, everything in the state come through our office, and we pay them centrally out of the fund. So it is working through a state agency, and I heard a lot of sort of sentiment against that. It's not really giving up control, it's just having it at a central place. I think it's more efficient that way, just my personal opinion. So again, 5% of our revenue goes to fund the administration of the system. We collect about $12 million a year in revenue, which is really not a lot of money. So I sort of cornered your representative on the way out, just happened to see him in the parking lot, and I said, if you could do two things, have a statewide program and have push PSAP consolidation. We used to have something like 90 PSAPs back in the early 2000s, and we pushed PSAP consolidation. One PSAP per county, with tribals and state police being exempt from that. That's how we are able to make $12 million a year work, and we do equipment upgrades on a 5-year cycle, and it's working. No, we're not making great strides on next generation. We're hoping to get the legislation passed again trying again to get it passed, not passed again. Reminds me of a joke, but we won't go there. Let's see, what activities do we fund? Okay, we fund everything that has to do with the telephony side of the call, the incoming, locating the caller. We don't fund CAD, radio, RMS, repeaters, towers. We don't fund brick and mortar. We don't fund staff. Those are all picked up by local governments. And, local government is a very big player in this. They have to provide the staff, the building. Some of our PSAPs are in very old county courthouses. Some of them are historic, so it's not all bad. Let's see. How do local call centers receive funding? We have a grant program. So each grant, you think, how is the money distributed? Well, it's based on need. We provide funding for a PSAP that meets the needs of that size of community. We've seen some growth. We've had to spend some more money on expansions, but that's normal. How do we have input from our participants, our stakeholders? Our main stakeholder group is the New Mexico Association of Counties PSAP affiliate. That's our main stakeholder group. Some recent projects we've done, we've undertaken what I've been told is one of the first, or possibly the first, next generation cybersecurity assessment and plan development, which is basically sitting on a shelf because we're not moving forward next generation, but we did do that. We upgraded an ATM network to an MPLS network recently. We acquired firewalls and routers to enhance our security position, and also we replaced PSAP equipment on a 5-year cycle. So the things that we pay for the network and database, we pay for equipment, which is, we do MIS servers, map servers, consoles, recorders. When I say consoles, I mean furniture, not radio interface. Generators, firewalls, routers, switches. On the network side, we fund the CAMA trunks, the ES trunks. Those are the trunks that gather the calls from the local end office that go through the selective router, and then the CAMA trunks ship them back to the local PSAP. So So we fund all that. We also fund an MPLS network that is used for some Viper host remote locations, as well as map distribution. We have a centralized map system so that we have a contractor, GIS contractor, that takes our local maps, puts them all together, and ships them back out to the PSAP through this map server. We won some kind of award for it many years ago, and it's been in place for quite a while. What are we working on? Well, we'd like to say we're working on next generation, but we're really not, because we just don't have the money for it. What are our plans and preparations for text to 911? Well, I'm here to tell you, we're here to learn from you. I spent the afternoon yesterday with Kimberly in Larimer County, or Loveland. It was very enlightening, and I cannot wait to get back and share this information. I'm spending the morning, tomorrow morning, at Bruce's shop in Pitkin County. So I'm going to look at two solutions and go back and share this knowledge. And we've invited Kimberly to come down and speak to our PSAP directors. She had some thoughts on how we could do the whole state. Instead of doing it piecemeal, we did phase 2 piecemeal, and I just found in one county that one of them slipped through the cracks. We forgot to notify Sprint in Guadalupe County, and 6 years after the fact, we got phase 2 turned up yesterday. You know, and you think, what if you're a citizen out there on the interstate on I-40, and you were calling, and there was a debacle and lawsuits? Can you imagine the ugliness that would have ensued? So I'm kind of thinking maybe we should just do this text 911 on a statewide basis. Kimberly talked about how she's helping other counties answer calls, how it's working. I kept asking, but what's the catch? And there doesn't really seem to be a catch, and there's not a lot of money involved either. So, again, I'm thrilled to be here, thrilled to share some of our experiences, and I'm not saying our way is better. It's different, but what I am saying is we can learn a lot from each other. Back to my list here. So the surcharge, again, is 51 cents a month. I didn't finish my list of what we do pay for. So we pay for equipment, which is 911 equipment and recorders and generators. We pay for the network and database, which includes wireless selective router alley charges, which are climbing as alley charges for landlines are falling. We pay for maintenance on equipment, but not recorders. We pay for GIS, and that was a bit of a battle, and you may recall some of that when Daryl was in New Mexico, but we have started funding GIS activities such as laptops, GPS, training. We just had a conference in Las Cruces about a month ago, and it was better attended by GIS people than it was 911 people. It was very, very encouraging. We do training for GIS through a Mexico State County College, so that GIS people can actually get a certification for GIS type applications for 911. We do 911 training, but it must be accredited by our law enforcement academy. So it can't just be some fly-by-night, there's a jillion outfits out there. But if our law enforcement academy has put their seal of approval on it, and the dispatchers get CEs for it, then we fund it. We also fund GIS consulting. I mentioned the contractor. It was started out being Contact One, and now it's Entrado. They do the stitching of the maps together. We send up through this MPLS network. We send the maps up, the raw maps. They work them, send them back, put them on the map server, and every time they log on view, they get a fresh map with all the updates. So if I could wave my magic wand and make two suggestions, as I mentioned to your legislator, PSAP consolidation and a statewide program. It's not all bad and evil like you might think. And I know of a couple of states, Maine is one, that have their 911 program in their Public Regulation Commission. So that's where it's housed. We're with Department of Finance. It doesn't really matter where it is. A lot of states are under DPS. We are not under a board like I believe Utah is now, correct? Are you under a board? But it's an authority. It's a quasi. Okay, so ours is a state. We're an executive agency. We answer right up through the governor, to a cabinet secretary. It's working. I'm not saying we're the best, but our system works. And with additional revenue from prepaid and VoIP, I think we'll be able to move forward with next generation. And again, let's learn what we can from each other and leverage each other's successes. I'm certainly going to leverage off your successes with Texas 911 when I go back to Mexico.
I see we've run out of time.
Well, Bill answered all of the starter questions at once, so.
You know what? I'll just very quickly tell my tale. We in Utah, we have a Public Utilities Commission, but they don't regulate 911. So we're kind of unregulated in that way. We have a couple of really good pieces of legislation that really drive our bus, tell us what we can or should or shouldn't do, and then we have rules that are based on the legislation that further define our processes. We have 3 surcharges. We have a 61-cent fund, and the surcharges are on every device that can access 911, with the exception of prepaid. And while I have the thought, if you're not collecting from Magic Jack here in the state, you should be. You did? Okay, perfect. Because I was floored when I found out there's something like 3,000 Magic Jack users in Utah. It's crazy. Anyway, we need to get that money from wherever we can think of places we can get it. So we have a 61-cent fund, and that is collected by the Tax Commission and distributed to all the PSAPs for them, for the most part, to do whatever they want with. All right, and that's based on subscriber counts. And we have the same thing you have here. We have our Wasatch Front PSAPs are very flush with cash, and then we have our dirt poor counties where they're not only trying to answer 911, but they're jailers. And the amount of money they get from the surcharge is pathetic. We have one county, they get like $500 a month. We have some counties that have less than 1,000 population. So you start doing the math, and really, this funding model that we're all used to is so pathetic. Okay, but anyway, I digress. Our second fund is what we call our 9-cent fund, and that comes to the committee that I oversee. And we use that money, and it works out to just around maybe around $3 million a year, about. And we use that to upgrade our CPE. And with the odd exception, fund other things. Like we had a dirt poor county didn't have road signs, so we gave them $30,000 for road signs. I mean, emergency responders got to know where to go, and the people that are calling 911 need to have a clue as to where they are. So that made sense to do that. We also fund a system called ECATS. You guys know what ECATS is? Okay, we have it statewide, and until I arrived on the scene, it really wasn't being used much. But the more I learned about it, the more we have used it to do just a whole bunch of things, from measuring wireless caller location accuracy to call processing times to call volumes. It's just amazing. But you guys are probably already familiar with all that. And then we have a new fund called the CAD fund. It's a 6-cent surcharge. So when you add them all up, it's 76 cents, which is dirt cheap, a bargain if you ask me, compared to some other states. And we have just short of 3 million people in our state. So we're not rolling in cash, but kind of like New Mexico, it's working, but it's a flat rate. That these surcharges are paid by anywhere in the state. Everybody gets the same. And do the math. What's 12 times 76? Is that like $10? People are getting 911 for like $10 a year. It's a bargain. So anyway, our 6-cent CAD fund, we have some issues. We had some issues with calls that have gone horribly wrong. And so what we decided to do is investigate setting up what we call a CAD aggregator. And it's a cloud-based thing, and all the CAD systems are going to feed into it so that you will be able to send a call to a neighboring jurisdiction through the CAD aggregator, or you'll be able to go to see what's going on in the southern part of the state or the northern part of the state, and then have the capability of doing like a blast, like an event blast, to everybody or to your neighbor or just your county, your zone, or whatever. So we're in the process. We're just barely out of the gate on that one. And again, we've become a lot more flexible on what we can fund through that 61-cent fund. They can't buy bullets or helicopters or cars, but they can pretty much use it to do anything that is germane to emergency call processing. All right? And out of those funds, they pay their CAMA charges and everything else. But like everywhere else, the PSAPs are heavily subsidized too by local tax dollars. Our 8-cent or our 9-cent fund traditionally has funded CPE upgrades. We got a 1-cent increase, and that's what we're using to pay for all the network connection costs to connect everybody to a backbone EZNet, which we're in the process of turning up, and we're going to be paying for that as well. We have a multi-node project that is about 2.5 years old that is in the Wasatch Front. It involves 6 PSAPs, and it's all a Viper system. It's all hosted. And the reason one of the big reason why we had to do that is we have our biggest PSAP is called VEC, Valley Emergency Communications. That's where Gigi works. And we did not have a PSAP that was big enough to take their calls should they have a catastrophic failure. So that's why we did the multi-node. And if VEC burns to the ground, the dispatchers just go log in at anywhere on the multi-node, and the calls start coming to them. Okay, and we have a statewide radio system, 800 megahertz trunk radio system, which it obviates the excuse, well, we won't have radio. Well, we do have radio, and that's worked really well. And we've actually had some failures where the calls have been dynamically rerouted to another PSAP. What else?
Text to 911.
We're just pulling the trigger on doing a text to 911 beta in that multi-node that I was just talking about, the Greater Wasatch multi-node. And that's going to be an Intrado-based solution because the entire multi-node is on Viper equipment, and we're just getting rolling on that one too. And so once we get that done, then we'll probably be going to do statewide implementation of text to 911 for those PSAPs who want to do it. And just talking a little bit more about how Utah is set up. Like I said, we're just short of 3 million people. We're just like Colorado. We're mostly north-south with some east-west. We have areas, recreation areas, that are just absolutely jammed with people in the wintertime and the summertime. And ironically, one of our biggest summertime recreation places is served by one of the probably most dirt poor PSAP in the state. It is really, it's ugly. But I'll go back to what we're trying to do in Utah. We use the word consolidation in a slightly different way. We want to consolidate the technology if we can. And I think that if we can start doing the hosted models style of technology, as we move in that direction, I think consolidation will naturally happen to a degree on its own. Because there's merit in having, I've been at this a long time and I tend to get on my soapbox here, but there's merit in having an infrastructure that supports proper training, proper certifications, these protocols, quality assurance, IT, HR, you go on through the list. And the small little dirt poor PSAPs have none of the above. We have 2 PSAPs in the state that just don't do EMD. They just don't do it. You know, and so that's another thing that my little committee, we're working on, trying to raise the standards, trying to get that level, that playing field throughout the state, so that if, no matter where you dial 911, you get the same level of service. And right now, we don't have that. We don't have that, and it scares the crap out of me, quite frankly, knowing what I know. So we're working towards that. Our committee has representatives from all the regional governments and regional councils, and most of them are PSAP people, and most of them are people who are directing a PSAP. And they're bright, they're aggressive, smart, and want to get stuff done, and they want to change things. And that's what's so exciting about what's going on in Utah, is the wheels of progress have finally started to turn. Because for 8 years, that's how long the committee had been established about the time I arrived. They were the same people for 8 years, and some of them didn't have any PSAP experience or background. And as those people switched out, and we were able to switch in the PSAP people and kind of play the system a little bit, so we ensured that the right people were getting nominated and appointed, everything started to change. Everything started changing. The ECATS thing, the standards, the training, the movement towards next generation, texting, the whole thing, it all started to change. And so we're riding that wave of change. And I'll just comment on what Bill said about our NASNA brothers and sisters. Some states are absolutely not even out of the starting gate with 911. Well, they have 911, but they don't have any state coordination. You know, it's just all higgledy-piggledy. Is that a Canadian expression? Okay, and then it's kind of like the level of service of 911 in Utah. You have some states that have absolutely nothing and are completely unorganized, to some states that are just on it, and they're just making it happen. Maine happens to be one of them. You guys have done a good job. You got some distance to go. But so in the overall, in the grander scheme of things, I think I'm almost done talking. We're not in too bad a shape out here, but we have some distance to go, and we really have to figure out this funding thing. 2 NASMAs ago, we had a think tank on funding where we just sat around and broke up into little groups. And I know that if we added half a cent to the sales tax in Utah, we'd be able to fund everything. But tax is like the 4-letter word. Can't do it. Surcharge, on the other hand, is different. People, your electorate look at the surcharge different than they do at a tax increase. So you can play that shell game a little bit with a surcharge, but you just can't get away with it in any other way. So, when I was a kid, 911 was funded by sales tax, property tax, almost completely. And that's going back into the 60s. It was in Canada. Yeah, I think that was a fairly common model. Yeah. By the way, Canada actually had the first triple-digit emergency service calling system in 1959 in a city called Winterpeg, if you've ever been there. But it wasn't 911, so it doesn't count. It was 999. So if you want to laugh, go Google Winnipeg 911, and you'll see this old black and white TV clip from 1959. That's quite hilarious. Anyway, that's about it for me. If I could wave my magic wand, I think the first thing I do in Utah is equalize the levels of service across the state by hook or by crook, however you do that. Because right now if something goes haywire in the Wasatch Front, you're good, you're covered. But if you fall into a lake or hit a tree in some of these dirt poor counties, you're in trouble. And that just simply can't exist in this day and age. The expectation of our visitors is that when they recreate here, or in Utah, or anywhere for that matter, and they need help, they dial 911. What's their expectation? It's going to work. They're going to get pre-arrival instructions. They're going to have somebody at the other end that has their head screwed on, and not somebody that hasn't received any training. We got PSAPs. We got some people in Utah in 911 with no training, other than what they can do on the job. And we offer free post-certified training in Utah to anybody that wants it. Entry-level dispatcher training. Free! We don't need that here. We're doing just fine here. We don't need that certification. We don't need that END. So we got some distance to go. But I don't think our case is particularly unique when you look nationwide. So, anyway, you guys got any questions for either one of us? Yeah. CenturyLink.
So CenturyLink is provided the entire EZNet, and you just pay a fee.
Well, it's CenturyLink, Intrado and CenturyLink together in cahoots. And I'll tell you, we get along very well with our telcos. Very well.
Thank you. That's what I thought the case was.
Anybody else?
No.
Two things. There was a gentleman who came to one of our conferences a number of years ago who cited surveys that said that people don't object to paying up to $1 on their phone bills to support 911. If I was running a statewide level funded system, I'd set the surcharge at $1. In fact, that was part of the idea of the foundation we have here was if people aren't paying $1 on their phone bill, they'll pay some more off their phone bill. Unfortunately, they don't because they expect government to take care of it. But that was the idea. The gentleman from New Mexico, you talked about consolidation. Can you talk about the process of consolidation and who made the decisions and the criteria for consolidation?
That consolidation was actually pushed by our Lieutenant Governor's office, and the criteria is that each county would only have one PSAP, with some exceptions. That was if there was. We have a couple of counties that are very long and narrow, from top to bottom, and this is Lee County that comes to mind. And it started out having, I think, 4 PSAPs. They just recently voluntarily consolidated down into one, but we have about 3 or 4 other counties that have waivers, and if there are 2 PSAPs that are more than 20 miles apart, then we gave them waiver to the consolidation requirement. But it's based on 1 PSAP per county, with state police and tribals being exempted from that requirement. And we have one county, this may sound familiar, but there's no parallel. Otero County, where are you? Okay, yeah, there's an Otero County in New Mexico too. And they have refused to consolidate. We cut off their funding several years ago. They have a city of Alamogordo, and Otero County PSAP, and they have received no funding for about 4 or 5 years now. They back each other up. They have PSAPs that are less than 2 miles apart. And just in the last 3 months, I think they've had 2 fiber cuts that took them both out. We like the idea of having a backup in the neighboring county, so if a single event doesn't take them both out. But back to your question, it's really driven, and we have some very large counties, but this was not a popular idea at all. You're talking about law enforcement people who, this is their kingdom. This is their dispatch. Don't mess with my dispatch. Well, we pushed the idea, we forced the issue, and for those who wouldn't go along with it, we cut off their funding. Simple as that. And it's well, once again, we don't have a board. We're an executive state agency. So it's our management. We're a few levels down below the governor. It's the governor, the cabinet secretary, local government division director, and then our program. So we don't just do things because we're mean. We do it because we're trying to be fiscally responsible. One of our sort of mottos for our agency is oversight. So it's we're trying to spend the money responsibly. And to your comment about $1, in my book, that's too much. I hear constantly people complaining about all the taxes and fees on their phone bill, and there's a long list. You know, they all add up, and people, everyone that I've ever talked to, they don't like them. And if you could find a way to make the 70-some cents work here, I would stick to that. Anytime you go to your legislature, raising taxes, it's not a popular thing. It's going to be a hard sell, too. You're going to have to justify it. There's a lot of backup. Why do you need it? What's it for? And maybe this is all done through your Public Regulation Commission, but raising those fees, that's a touchy issue. We're not asking to raise our fee. We just want to get revenue on prepaid and VoIP that we're missing.
Anybody else?
And you're able to transfer all your calls between all the PSAPs except for the ones that are kind of standalone that you had, the 3. Everybody else is able to transfer throughout.
Did I see a hand up in the back? Nope. At my age, you got to do that or you're going to forget about it. What we started to do, first of all, I didn't believe that landline telephones in Utah were going away at the suggested rate. Okay, and I know in my own circumstance I have a landline telephone, but I also support 4 cell phones. So do the math there. Okay. So what we started to do is we started to get the subscriber counts from the tax commission as for landline and for wireless and VoIP, as well as the revenues, and I started a trend chart, and I was shocked, right, when I started to look at this trend chart, because it was, landlines weren't going away. They were trending up. Not very much, but they were trending up until last month, and now they flattened out. So we're at that crossroad in Utah, and I don't know what it's like here. If you're not looking, you're not seeing. Isn't that an expression that Parry Dispatch uses or something? Anyway, the cell phones, of course, are going up, and those revenues are going up. But landline increases or landline trends have flattened, and I expect now that they're going to start to go down. But I don't know what it's like here or in other parts of the country. But we also measured what our wireless call volume is, and I was floored. What do you think it is in Utah on average? Try 85%. 85% of our calls come in wireless. And that's another thing we didn't know. So that we were, you wrestle with all this anecdotal crap you hear, and you don't know what to believe. So the only way I thought we're ever going to figure this stuff out, so that, and ECATS has been a huge help. Our profession has been terrible in statistics and keeping hard data and all that. And it's about time that we started doing that, because a lot of the whining and sniveling we do is based on the fact that we haven't done our homework. And we haven't had the stats to convince legislators or authorities that, hey, this is what's really going on in our 911 centers. We've got to start doing that. And so that's one of the things I've tried to start doing in Utah. And the other thing that we don't have authorities in Utah. We're kind of one big happy family, but we all get along, and we do things by consensus in our committee. And our committee is actually the body that probably sets a lot of the standards because they listen to us. Theoretically, when we first started up, we were about this big. We were implementing phase 2.
Well, once we got phase 2 done, now what? So we started to get into these other things, and some of the things I've talked about today. But anyway, it's all good fun.
Just our experience with the fall off of landlines has been more market. We keep up with this because we pay alley charges for every landline that we have, and I remember, I guess it was a couple of years ago, we had something like 500,000 landlines throughout the state. The most recent figure, and I'm visual, I remember writing this on my board, it's 357,000. So ours is done a little bit different than Utah's. It plummeted, but I think now it's, well, maybe I'm saying this because I still have a landline, but I'd like to think it's sort of flattening out, but in the last couple of years, it's really taken a dive. And our overall revenue is staying more or less consistent, right about 12 million, but it's starting to edge down just a little bit, which concerns me because, you know, that sort of threatens our ability to stay up with that 5-year equipment replacement cycle that is so important. That's probably the number one issue to our PSAPs, is keeping the equipment not only replaced, but keeping it fresh. I'm not a real big fan of having to pay software subscription charges to the CPE vendors, but we do it. We stay current with the software. It's kind of a, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't, but really damned if you don't.
I think we're almost done here, right? Okay, so what I want you guys to do, if you're really bored, Google Utah 911 Committee and poke around on our website. Okay, we had a website that was a piece of crap. This is a lot better, but we're redoing this one again. But have a look, and you can look at our minutes, look at our agendas, and we even have the audio recordings of the meetings there. So you'll hear a lot of laughter and joking and stuff. So we're a pretty easygoing group. We get along for the most part. We do things by consensus. There's a grant application process that we have in place, and we do things on a 5-year cycle as well. And as a result of that, our 38 PSAPs, for the most part, except for 1 or 2 that are going to be NG ready, they're all NG ready. So we're lucky that way.
Any final questions for Bill or Eric? Okay, well, I've kept you over, and I apologize for that, but when we're having a good discussion, I hate to cut it short. So thank you very much for coming. I do want to say a special thank you to our sponsors. I listed them earlier. I won't do it again, but they're all on the back of your program. If you do business with any of them, make sure to thank them for sponsoring us, because again, that's how we're able to hold these events. And I want to thank Jefferson County Courts and Admin Building for having us here, and Jeff Irvin and their staff for assisting us. I appreciate it. So everybody drive safe. Thank you.